Splashcannon says in the chat here, he says that some people don't care about story like you. From certain franchises, it's something that you want, but others I care long as less as long as the gameplay is fun enough. Okay, fair point. Let's go ahead and say that. But even then, you could, for a lot of cases, you could say there's improvements to gameplay in Destiny, but I could go ahead and easily point out all the downgrades in Destiny compared to Halo. Okay, Destiny's maps look great and everything. Perfect. Halo's looked just as equally beautiful, or you could argue more, depending. Obviously, you know, the graphics improve in Destiny because it's a newer game, but you can't interact with the environment at all. In Halo, everything was interactable. You could blow up objects, you could move them side to side, there was vehicles available you could get in, and Destiny, you just have a Sparrow, and the Sparrow doesn't do much besides you could do like a couple of tricks on it or whatever.
Now we're cutting into territory about how good of a game Destiny is.
Well,
I mean, let's stick to the
we'll get back to it, but I want to interact with the chat, because this actually does tie into the topic. I'm saying
a little bit of what you're saying in the game, it's just not as fully fleshed out as Halo.
But that's what I'm saying. So games as a service, this is a direct. I think, in my opinion, that, you know, whenever you have a sequel, right? I'm gonna quote the Ackman here, just because, you know, I'm a big fan of his videos. I'm gonna quote the Ackman. Whenever you get a sequel to a franchise, or something that's in the similar context of a certain franchise, and you make something new, expanding upon it, that's exactly it. You need to expand upon it. Why is it that in a game from the early 2000s, when you fight an AI, they feel intelligent, they sidestep, they know when you're there, they talk about you, they're saying, oh, you know, the demon is here, referring to Master Chief, right? If you stick a sticky grenade on them, a plasma grenade, they react like freaking out because they know that they're about to die. There's more AI interactivity. There's vehicles you could get into in the game. There's more diverse things happening in the game itself. Whereas when you're playing in Destiny, because of the fact that, you know, there's more focused on loot, which thankfully isn't monetized in Destiny, so that's a fair point to them. Obviously, we're talking about specifically monetization or games as a service, but, you know, the fact that they've created a platform where they're more worried about emotes, skins, loot, the multiplayer, things like the raid and stuff, the gameplay suffers too, not just the narrative. The AI feels extremely less advanced than it did in Halo. Like, literally, whenever you're given a task in Destiny, most of the time it's just, oh, sit here and kill 5 waves of enemies. Right. That's boring. What happened to having my Marines next to me, my other elites next to me, my aliens, my grunts, interacting with them if I shot them, fighting the enemy and they tell me things, or diverse bosses. Half the time when I'm playing Destiny, I feel like I'm just fighting a giant ball that shoots lasers. Boring.
Catch their result. Yeah. And that's also something too. Like, I know you're saying that not everyone cares about stories. Some people just care about gameplay, and that's true. But I think lessons have been learned in these 10 years that we all have to keep looking out. And I'm gonna start, you know, maybe pissing off some people here, but Star Wars Episode 9 and its amazing storyline almost completely destroyed the franchise, and only by The Mandalorian, which is a completely fantastic series, which I have yet to watch. I'm gonna have the pleasure of watching it for the first time soon. Brought back story to the show, or the Star Wars universe. Jedi Fallen Order brought story and all these amazing things, and then we start hearing good things again. Like, yeah, I get what you mean, that story isn't as important, that it needs to be constant, because it's true. Like,
well, let me correct what you're saying, just real quick. Episodes 7, 8, and 9 had a narrative. 7, I thought it was a fine narrative, but what you're arguing is the quality of the narrative. Yeah, exactly. Like, subjectively, you felt that they didn't do a good job presenting it or writing it, which is an impactful thing. Now, obviously, a movie is different from a game, and the fact that in game you have to worry, you could worry about a narrative or just gameplay. What I'm arguing or discussing with Splashcannon is that he's saying that, but people don't care about stories, or some people don't care about stories.
What I'm reinforcing is that people should care. Because of these 10 years that we've seen that as they dropped, so did the quality of the games. And it's because
true.
they're not being passionate, or they're not being allowed to be passionate about their development, so they're not taking interest in making the game worthwhile or playable.
Yeah, that's a valid point.
And a lot of things, you know, we can see in companies like BioWare, which make Anthem, right? they were making, Baldur's Gate, Dungeons and Dragons type games. They eventually started having to be, EA was like, hey, start making shooters, get us into the mainstream. So they made Mass Effect. It was still amazing. They found a way to bring it to their, pursuit of development. And then all of a sudden Anthem came in, and it was an idea that was explored in different ways, and the creator was like fired, and then he quit, and then he came back, and he quit again, and he came back, and then he quit again, like recently. And
it's because the passion honestly doesn't feel like it's there anymore.
And even if it's there for like a split minute, it's completely perverted by all the monetization, and you need to make sure the players are paying, you need to make sure it's RNG.
Exactly. Rather than focusing on
exactly.
I get your point, and I totally agree. Yeah, maybe a lot of people, because a lot of the time I know a lot of people that buy Call of Duty, for example, and they just want to hop straight to the multiplayer. They don't care about the campaign. Fair enough, but at least Call of Duty has, for the most part, had the same thing at least over and over. And when they started dropping in sales, they'll make sure to put in improvements again. Like maybe they'll go 6 games where they don't really add anything or any improvements, but then their sales start dropping, and now all of a sudden they do something that's kind of like revolutionary, at least for Call of Duty's sake, right? Like something that's crazy for Call of Duty. But so talking about what you're saying, that not every game benefits from having a big game AI, and that, they're meant to overpower you in numbers, that's fine. Okay, maybe AI can be easier or whatever, but why don't the Fallen? Yeah, why don't the Fallen talk? Or if they're not gonna talk because they have an alien language because of lore or whatever, why don't they react when you like kill them or shoot them, bro? They're like, they just like stagger and they just fall over. Like, you go up and punch them and they just silently just
Splash. Just so you know, we're not talking about that the AI needs to be intelligent. We're just talking about like how the
immersion,
the world reacts to what your actions are.
Exactly.
And a little comment on what you're saying. Like, I know you feel Destiny's supposed to be overpowering to you, but that again is how you play the game. Like when you play, an MMO, it's more like a stat like type of game where you see like who has more damage or points or whatever. Like in Destiny, it's supposed to make you feel powerful. Once you start realizing how to use your supers, your power-ups, and all that stuff, the game, like, you can kill like hundreds of enemies, in the blink of an eye. You're, like, literally, the whole point is for you to go through the missions fast and grind and get more powerful weapons so you yourself can be. That's a whole different conversation. We're not gonna even get into it. But the point is, what he's trying to say, it's like there needs to be some form of care for the game. Now, a game I want to point out is Marvel's Avengers with Michael abhors. He hates it with a passion because he feels like he got to cheat out of his money, and I agree, he did get cheated out of his money. I did try to tell him to wait.
That's okay. So actually,
but hold on real quick. Just let me make my point.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is basically, Marvel's Avengers did one thing right, and that was to actually give us a complete, straightforward story to make us understand why the game is what the game is. Even though the story is a little poorly made and it's stretched across different side quests, so they force you to go through different side quests so that you have content to play and stretching out the story, which is what Michael hates the most. If you actually do go through the story, there is something there that you can fall back on and say, okay, I understand why this world exists. I understand why I'm going into it, which is what Michael wants essentially. He just wants, when you play Destiny, to understand why is the Fallen attacking. Well, I mean, I think they did a good job of Beyond Light. They were saying like, Aramis, the big baddie of the new year, was like saying, the Fallen have been like, with no house, and the Traveler betrayed us, so we're gonna get back at them, and we're gonna use the darkness because we got it. So she's trying to create like a rebellious, group and regroup all the different factions of the Fallen, push them all together, make one giant faction to fight the light. But the problem is that they don't really convey that well from the beginning of the whole Destiny experience. Like, you don't really know that unless you know the lore and you talk to somebody that reads it.
Exactly. And to add on to Jordan's point, even though I get that there's players like you that might not care about a narrative, since you brought up the point earlier that companies are there to make money, a proper narrative, all it does is, for those who do care, it just creates investments for those players in the series. I'm always a big fan of add whatever you want, but don't ever force people to have to go through it, especially if it's something that's negative. So, a future topic that we could talk about could be skill-based matchmaking. There's people for it, there's people against it, but the simple answer there is it's existed in past games already. You add a ranked playlist, so people who want skill-based matchmaking can always play skill-based matchmaking, and then people who just want random lobbies can go and play multiplayer. We're not going to elaborate any further on that because that's not what this podcast episode's about, but it's the same thing. In Destiny, make a great story, and then if you don't care about it, congratulations, you don't have to go play it, but I want to. And it's only going to sell more games. The problems with games as a service is that now developers are literally constantly just ignoring certain aspects that used to make video games very good just to deliberately make money elsewhere. So they're losing out on a market share, or they're losing out on certain buyers, on a certain part of the audience that would care about these things. So yeah, you know, whatever, vandals or whatever don't have to be overpowered or whatever, but it'd be great for there to be a semblance of the fact that they show that, you know, they know that you're there outside of shooting like 5 bullets and stepping to the side, shooting 5 bullets, stepping to the side. Say something, react, you know, have different animations thrown in there. Give us vehicles outside of just sparrows that suck, like actual vehicles that do something, maybe something that flies, you know. But I digress, because enough of Destiny. This isn't a Destiny podcast, it's a Games of the Service podcast.
We can talk endlessly about the game, but we can do it as a future episode.
An additional thing that we were talking we're talking about is
we never went to gacha.
Well, just gacha, I don't even know, because at this point we've already been live for an hour and 16 minutes. Gacha.
Keep going, bro.
Okay, you're right. Okay, do you want to talk about gacha? You want to elaborate? Because you're the one with more. Okay. I would never touch a gacha game with a 10-foot pole.
Gacha is like, it's where loot boxes derived from. It's a predatory system.
Water.
Where they try to
water?
monetize. I actually have my water bottle in your fridge. You can just bring it.
Sure.
I'll just full screen real quick so we can talk about this. All right, so gacha systems, you know, we're gonna talk about Genshin Impact and because we don't really play much of the other games. They're really genuinely bad games, and I mean they might have like a little bit of a fun thing to play, but what you really play those games for is the cosmetic, getting your character, the one that you like, which is where the joke or the meme of waifus and husbandos comes from. You know, husbandos being the male, waifus being the females. If no one knew. But that's where the meme comes from. It's like you get the character that you want, that you like how they look, you like their fighting style, and then you level them up and make them better. And then the way that they get you is that they put it in a banner and they tell you got some rolls here, you have a certain percentage to get it, and then, you know, every so often you might get one or you might not. It's all RNG and you have to continuously pay to roll for it. So that system is kind of similar to the loot box, but it's also kind of pay to win because you're not just doing it for cosmetics anymore. You're doing it legitimately for progress in the game, as well as getting the best weapons, best characters, or any other type of thing that they add to the gacha system. And then lastly, just to iterate on it as well, so we have it, is the battle passes, which is what I think is another great system has been added that Call of Duty has. It's like where they kind of allow you to get all the cosmetics for a $10 fee. You just have to kind of level up through it. Now I know what was being said before, where like I'm gonna show you gacha games right now. Give us a second, but I'm gonna say the battle pass just so we have it in mind. So the battle pass is like basically like a better way to do content stream, which is what they've been doing with Call of Duty lately, where the map packs are free now, and the only thing that changes is that you are basically paying $10 for a level up system, so you can go through and get cosmetics while you're playing the multiplayer. Destiny has this, but Destiny does it by giving you new activities. What other games have? Division has it, but it's like not important at all. Hilariously, and usually it's. Did
you answer what a gacha game is?
I told him we're gonna show him right now.
Okay, you go ahead and talk. I'll go ahead.
I'm just covering these 2 points so we can get out of here.
Yeah. Let me pull up gacha game.
Just put up Genshin Impact.
Genshin Impact. Okay, yeah, fine. Go, continue talking. I got you.
So and then put wait, because wailing is always fun. And then, you know, with the battle pass, I think it's the best way. Like I was saying, just it provides DLC, new content, whatever, and it depends on what it is. And usually it's a free track that follows along the premium track. And if you pay the $10, you also get the premium track, which is what I think is what Fortnite has, or how it came from. Fortnite was the one that created it, and everyone else took it. So in Destiny, for example, you have a line that gives you, you know, cosmetics, Eververse stuff for free, and now it gives you bright dust, like extra bright dust, so you can buy things, right? And then you have your premium thing, which is a $10 pack, where you get extra rewards on top of that stuff with an exotic and.
I actually found something I think it would be valuable. So a gacha game. This is how you spell gacha, by the way. It's not like gotcha. No, it's GACHA. Yeah, it is kind of like gotcha because they got all your money after abusing you. But no, a gacha game spelled GACHA they're video games that implement a gacha, which is like another name for a capsule toy vending machine they implement
Slot machine.
a gacha mechanic, which is similar to loot boxes, inducing players to spend in-game currency to receive a random virtual item. This is according to Wikipedia. Most of the games are free-to-play mobile games where the gacha serves as an incentive to spend real-world money. And just to answer your question, a perfect example of something like this is the game Genshin Impact, which I think has been the latest gacha game to, oh my lord, the latest gacha game
to release and
to take off.
I want to point out too, just so you guys know, gacha was what started it all. This is the predatory gambling system, or the what started everything that became the mess that is loot boxes, and EA trying to grab from it. They studied the Chinese market mostly. This comes from Chinese, Japanese markets, and Korean market, where they do this sort of stuff in their games. It's what I was explaining before too. So gacha is a type of game where you pay a slot machine, essentially. They say the toy vending machine, but it's let's be honest, it's a slot machine. You're basically in your casino, moving the slots, trying to get your three cherries or sevens to get that lucky win with a high-end reward that is a really overpowered character that gets you across the level. That's what that is. It's predatory because, again, like I said, it's made in a way so you get, like, going back on the pleasure spikes, this is the pleasure spike.
Well, to make it worse,
awesome character.
To make it worse, forget the pleasure spike. This can be considered outright gambling. Like, you're not guaranteed
ever
anything. You could get absolute garbage for you putting the money in. But the problem is that with the RNG, right, or the luck element of you paying this game to try to see what you get, there is an actual psychology, right, that makes gambling addictive. Like, people have to go to interventions and seek psychological help when they become addicted to gambling, because there's an actual psychological component that drives you to put your money into this. And if that's not damaging, I don't know what is. Not only is, in my opinion, Genshin Impact mediocre, it's like a worse version of Breath of the Wild, in my opinion. The one thing that it has going for it, I think, is, it's a pretty game. Yeah, it's the Breath of the Wild elements that it copied. And it's a decent looking game, like I said, and it's available, I think, on all platforms. You can get it
no, you can get it on PlayStation,
PC
mobile,
and mobile. So PlayStation, PC, and mobile.
Coming soon.
So obviously, Breath of the Wild is exclusive to the Nintendo Switch, which kind of sucks if you really want to be into that type of game. Then maybe Genshin Impact is something for you. But it doesn't have any of the things that the interactivity and creativity that really makes Breath of the Wild what it is, while at the same time having this games as a service predatory garbage practice that is the gacha system.
Right.
It's gambling. It's horrible.
One thing I want to say too is, like, gacha games will always make you feel like you need to get better characters to beat the levels. It puts you on this system to get to better levels with poor story. Probably like not even maybe a most decent level design. So you have kind of like a progression thing, so you can feel powerful using your characters. But they're always gonna make you feel like you need to get better characters to beat the game. And a lot of times you need these better characters to get better at the game. It's just gonna happen. Now, to argue Michael's point, because this is actually what I'm gonna say, Genshin Impact is probably the best gacha system game to adopt a gacha system, and it's also the best at the design of a gacha system that I've ever seen, because the game does one thing that no other gacha system does, and that's that you can grab the free stuff in the game and use it to get to the end of the game. In other words, if you put all your efforts into the small characters that you have, the weaker characters, you could still benefit from all the experiences that the game has to offer that you would by getting the higher level characters. Now, of course, obviously the higher level characters will get easier, and that's the whole point. It's you getting better stuff. But what I've liked about it is that they've done it that way, but they've prioritized the Breath of the Wild type of thing instead. They want you to explore the game. They want you to walk around its world, hear the music, and they also want you to do a lot of the story. They actually made, they don't have to, but they made the game open world with a lot of story quests, a lot of lore things. Granted, the story isn't that great. It's pretty simple. It's like a 4Kids anime. For those of you who don't know, 4Kids was basically like grabbing all the awesome Naruto and One Piece and all those animes, and then just turning them like really childish for kids in America. And
well, but that's like an entirely different topic.
But what I'm trying to say is like they went that far to make a better experience for the gacha system, and then found a way to make it so in the end you realize that you're only paying again because you want those better characters, but you actually don't need them, and that's what I like. That's what I like about the game. You're not forced to get those characters to play the game. Gacha systems always force you to, at one point or another, to make a purchase to get a better game because that's how they want you to do it. This system, somehow they found a way to balance it out so you kind of want to do it because obviously you want your favorite character, but you don't have to if you don't want to, which is again the whole point of what I'm trying to say.
Jordan has been a tomato for quite a while now. Or are you saying because he's a little too red? That's the light. That's the light. Like, I have him on a slightly worse camera, so it doesn't have the full color range of what I have, of like mine.
Quality. We're starting off with the quality.
Yeah. If you'd like to support us and help us get better equipment, make sure you go ahead and check our merch at semerchandise.co-opsyndicate.com. You could also type !merch in chat, and also possibly consider visiting our Patreon at patreon.com//co-opsyndicate. You could also look at the panels in the About Me section. That would really help. Anyway. Hey there, guys. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Co-op Syndicate. Make sure to check out both the Co-op Syndicate main channel and clip channel to get all of our content. If you haven't already, please consider liking, subscribing, and ringing the bell as well so that you never miss out on any future episodes. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with your friends and family, or you could also share it on any social media website of your liking. If you guys would prefer to listen to our podcast on the go instead of viewing the full episode on YouTube, consider checking the Co-op Syndicate podcast out at TheCo-OpSyndicate.buzzsprout.com. We host the Co-op Syndicate on Buzzsprout, and it is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere where you listen to your podcasts. If you'd like to watch us as we record the podcast live, you could actually give us a follow at twitch.tv/Co-op-Syndicate. We go live every Thursday and Saturday at 4:30 p.m. If you'd like to support the channel, you could consider subscribing to us with Amazon Prime for free over there. If you'd like to participate in community events and talk to other members of the community, consider joining our Discord, which I will leave the links to in the description down below. If you would like to support the podcast and get rewarded in return, consider pledging to our podcast at patreon.com/Co-op-Syndicate, where you can support us at many different levels. There are multiple tiers that offer all sorts of different rewards for the level that you choose to support us at, including Discord privileges, merch, gift cards, and much more. Also, if you would just like the merch directly without pledging to the Patreon, you could buy our merch at merch.streamelements.com/Co-op Syndicate. Lastly, if you'd like to keep up with Jordan or I outside of the Co-op Syndicate, you can find us on every social media platform under Michael C. Moore for myself or JG_Mark1 for Jordan. Thank you guys again, and until next time, happy listening.